Hi guys, thanks for streaming Enter HeadSpace. If you're a comic book fan or want to get started, we've got a special treat for you. So stay tuned. Hi guys, welcome. You're now entering Headspace, where the show where we ask what's eating you, because we'd like to know and we'd like to talk about it. For today's episode, we'll be discussing the upcoming movie Eternals and the local comic book scene here in the Philippines. So, very special thank you to our guests today, Jojo, David, and Lex. I've encountered them through various Facebook groups, through buying and selling. They are the reason kung bakit wala akong pera kapag sweldo. Lagi nagpa-pop up din, especially si Jojo and si David kasi
Yeah.
sobrang bilis magbenta, sobrang mura. Like, you definitely can't say no. So hi guys, welcome to Enter Headspace.
Thanks.
Thank
Happy to be
you.
here.
Yep,
Hello.
glad to be here. Thank you.
So before we get started on the Eternals and all that, let's talk comic book. How long
Yep.
have you guys actually been collecting? Let's start with the youngest of the group, David.
I started probably around 2011 to late 2010. So that was around New 52 era. My first intro to comics was through the mobile game Injustice Gods Among Us. Because I was always on my iPad
Oh,
playing. And then from there, I got interested in superheroes and the comic book world. So I bought my first comic book. I remember it was December. It was Comic Odyssey in Green Hills pa.
Mm.
And from then on, I've never stopped.
so what was the first one that you bought?
If I remember correctly, it was a DC Trinity issue 4, 5, and 6 because they were connecting covers. Because I was just looking at nice looking covers back then. And I was intrigued by how the covers connected.
Well, I think we all got started and got hooked on the covers naman talaga. I mean, that's the most attractive part of it. So, what's the main line in your collection? Are
Uh,
you
my
collecting
main
anything actually
my main
specific?
line is sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
My main line is Green Arrow, so I've tried to complete most of his modern appearances because the Golden Age and Silver Age appearances are way too expensive. So his
Mhm.
first volume was Mike Grell, issue 1 to 80, which I've nearly completed, and also Wonder Year and Longbow Hunters by Mike Grell, and also Kevin Smith's run of 1 to 10 by Green Arrow.
I think these are older than you.
Yeah, they are. They are.
These comic books are older than you. Lex, how about you? How long have you been collecting, and what's your main line?
Yeah, it's been an on and off thing for me collecting. Probably I started around when I was in high school, around 95, 96. Particular friend influenced me. Back then, X-Men was the biggest franchise. So
Yeah, it's
I
just
started
very
with
hot.
X-Men. And
Jim Lee,
additionally,
no?
Jim Lee era. And a Filipino was very famous for illustrating X-Men, Will Portacio. So
Yeah.
Yes, Portasio.
more than one reason for me to collect X-Men. So I also fantasized about Psylocke. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I think
Didn't we
every
all?
yeah.
Silent
We
no.
all we all
Didn't
we
we
all
all?
did. We all did. When I entered college, I started working in order to buy my weekly fix. But back then
Mhm.
I think I can consider myself an immature collector back then. Unlike David, I didn't really follow stories except for X-Men. I went for the bad girl cover art, issue number one, speculation. So I wasn't following any story except for X-Men. When I started working, I stopped, and then I came back probably in 2010, and I never stopped since. My main line would probably be a bit diverse. It's composed of the best stories of the major characters of both Marvel and DC. So I have the Dark Knight Returns, Year One, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow for Superman,
Mhm.
Gods and Mortals for Wonder Woman for Marvel. I have Craven's Last Hunt, Planet
Mm.
Hulk for Hulk, and then
Yeah.
Demon in the Bottle. So I collect the best stories of every major character, and I'm also a big Vertigo fan. So I have completed the Sandman, Preacher, Why the Last Man. So that's the stuff that I collect.
Back when Sandman was still with Vertigo, no?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Not
So,
yet part of Sandman universe.
so you have definitely have the first appearance of Morpheus.
Yes. Yep. That's the first appearance of the Endless Family, the seven siblings.
I've only started reading The Sandman because hindi ko siya naabutan, to be honest with you. I bought Sandman Deluxe 1, 2, and 3 already. And
Okay.
I'm just hooked. Ang ganda
Yep.
niya. I never knew, because back then when it, fully booked used to release the graphic novels continuously. And makita mo yung, it's sobrang dami niya. It's those thin TPBs na pira-pira sa mga bibili. And you'll never find number one anywhere. And
Correct.
book is actually amazing. I can't wait for the TV show.
Yeah, I'm excited for the TV show as well. However, it's mixed with some trepidation because I put Sandman on a pedestal because I consider
Sobrang
this
taas na
finest,
expectation.
yep, the finest piece of comic literature. I think, no
Mm.
offense to Watchmen fans, but I think Watchmen is a bit overrated, and Sandman is actually better than Watchmen. And I place Sandman as head and shoulders above all forms of other comic books. So I'm a bit worried that the TV show might not do it justice, but at the same time, I'm also excited.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I know Civil War, Captain America Civil War, everybody put that in a high pedestal talaga.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the biggest MCU events. Eh.
Yes.
So, but when the movie came out, despite the fact that there weren't as many heroes as we would have expected, they made it work. I mean, it was a great
Yep.
movie.
One of the
Nothing.
best offerings that MCU has had. In fact, I consider the movie. It's one of those rare instances wherein the movie is better than the book for Civil War.
I will reread Civil War and I'll let you know. I'll let you know. I haven't read it in a while. How about you, Jojo? How long have you been collecting? And what's your main line?
I'm probably the lolo of the bunch here, no? I started collecting. I was in the second grade, which was 1978.
Wow, golden age. Golden or
No.
silver?
Oh, hindi
Bronze.
pa.
Bronze, bronze,
Hindi
bronze.
na.
Bronze.
Bronze age na yun. Grabe naman. The first book that I remember reading was Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. The ones that were drawn by Mike Grell and written by Jim Shooter at that time. And yun, nahook na ako doon. Then through the years, I just collected anything. No? Siyempre, cover nga, as you said. Cover is the first thing that attracts you, but then you get into the stories then. So I started collecting anything and everything. Flash, Green Lantern, X-Men, the Avengers, of course, Captain America. Just to show you how old I am, it's like naabutan ko pa yung unang store ni Phil Bars doon sa Green Hills. The one doon sa
Wait.
arcade.
Oh,
Yung nung ano pa lang siya, it was a stand. He basically had a kiosk there.
it's not
And,
even a
and I would
story.
Yeah, no, it was just a kiosk and just had the books there. And I'd spend about an hour each time I go there just talking to him. And I don't know if he still remembers me, pero ganun katanda na yun. And then during my high school years, I moved to the States. So, I really started collect. If you look at the key collector app, if you're into that, and then you look into the $50, $20 books, yung mga grails, I would say I had about 80% of all of those books.
Wow.
Wow.
Hello, yeah. So, and then I went home back. I went home in '92. Brought all of my stuff back here, but had some financial problems, so I had to sell off half. And I sold off the best half. So the ones that you guys probably saw was the not so good half na lang, pero still, those were still good. And then got married, got kids, stopped collecting the singles, and then went to the omnis and the hardcovers. I still buy singles now from time to time, pero I just focus on keys that I know I can flip later on. So, and then I just buy the hardcovers when they come out. That's the story for the actual reading.
So, are your kids into comic
Yeah.
books as much as you are?
My second son is more into comic books than my eldest son and my daughter. No, I have four kids kasi. My eldest and my daughter are the ones they know about the MCU. They grew up on it. They're not much into the comic books, but they do know the history. They read up on it before they watch movies. So they're very knowledgeable about it. They're more Trekkies actually, but my second son and I are the comic book or the comic book enthusiasts.
A family of geeks. That's the dream.
Exactly, exactly.
That's
Yeah.
the
So we
dream.
get good conversations at the table.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine the conversations during dinner or during lunch, pag may bago lumabas na movie and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Ako naman, I've
yeah.
been collecting. Kailan lumabas yung new Avengers number one? The Bendis run.
2005.
Yeah,
2005.
2005. That's the time I actually started collecting. I saw it lang. It was, sabi ko, I was, okay, I'm working already. I am gonna do something for myself that I always wanted to do. Because I grew up with Spawn. I grew up seeing Spawn everywhere. And
Mm.
Spawn and the X-Men and the Avengers everywhere. But you know, it was too late to catch up on Spawn at the time. So I was looking for a number one. It turns out that month, New Avengers number one just came out, the Bendis run, and so
Yeah.
that's the first thing I actually picked up. And then after 2 years, I stopped because I had to focus more on work and all that. Alam mo naman, career. And then I went back. Kailan ko pinano ng kahon yung dati nating konto?
2019, 2018.
Yeah, around that time. So I went back to collecting around 2018, Comic Quest. I was a big fan of Comic
Mm.
Quest. You know, how bummed out were you guys when they closed down? I
Mega
was
Mall.
so
Very
sad.
much. That's where I used to get my books, and then Mike became a personal. His parents became personal
Yeah.
friends of mine also.
Mike, I
So
got the pleasure to meet Mike, and I made, you know, friends with sila Ate Raquel. I call her, nasa
yeah.
I call her Ate Rocky. So tawag ko
Yeah.
si Ate
Yeah,
Rocky.
Raquel and
Si
Marie.
Raquel, yeah.
Marie.
Yeah,
Marie,
yeah.
yes. Oh, yeah.
Ano nga wala pang, their books usually come in raw, na walang
Mm.
backboard.
Walang
Mm.
plastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I used to do that as like therapy after work. I'll buy a
Mm.
bunch of backing boards from Phil Bars, which is across Comic Quest lang, and then just, you know, fill it out. Therapy
Mm.
lang, ang sarap lang talaga sa
Sarap lang.
pakit.
Very therapeutic to rebag, put boards on your comic book. Sarap na,
Even
sarap na.
just rearranging the omnibuses and the graphic novels and EPBs, sobrang
Mm.
it's very calming. So
Yeah.
you know, that's the life of a collector.
Yeah.
So let's talk
Yeah.
about the movie. How hyped are you guys about the movie? For the Eternals.
Very much. I mean, seeing the trailers, parang ang maganda dun sa trailers, it doesn't give away too much of the story. So you're actually quite curious about how it's gonna go. Kasi di ba may mga trailers that basically already tell you the story of what's going to happen. But this one is like, you get so many snippets na you can't, hindi mo maisip how it's going to progress. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And then, like I mentioned earlier on RT, it's already at 91%. So it all the more,
Thanks to the hype.
yeah, it increased the hype for me. So I really want to see it.
Because of the pandemic, the MCU has been put to a halt. I mean, comic book films in general. So we're all
Mm.
excited to see the new offerings of MCU. And after Black Widow, which pretty much is an espionage film,
That's true.
next
Like
one
James
would be,
Bond.
yeah, the next one would be Eternals, something a bit different. It's cosmic, similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's more mythological. It's about the stories of the gods and goddesses of Marvel Universe. So far, all comic book films of 2021 has been good, at least for me, for both
Mhm.
Marvel and DC, and I expect Eternals to be no different. So I'm hyped. I'm hyped for Eternals.
Mm.
For me, I generally don't watch trailers because I don't like getting spoiled. The last trailer I watched was Star Wars Episode 7. So for me to break my
Mm.
rule of anti-spoilers, Eternals was a pretty big deal for me. I haven't even watched the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. I
Mm.
mean,
Oh,
whatever
okay.
the
You
new
don't know the
movie
Easter
will be.
eggs yet.
Yeah.
Well, with regard to Eternals, honestly, personally, I know nothing about it. Absolutely, absolutely zero. So I'm gonna brush up and read up. Maybe David can open his 9.4 Eternal stuff for a while. No.
Oo.
Don't open that just for our benefit. Sayang yung 9.4.
Pakiscan yung pages.
I can open it. It's beside me right here. Here.
Pirate na lang natin.
Even if we don't know, I mean, speaking personally as well, I don't know a thing. I don't know much about Eternals,
Mhm.
but MCU has proven itself to take second or third tier characters and make them household names. I mean,
Yeah.
who knew Groot and Rocket Raccoon
Mm-hmm.
before the Guardians of the Galaxy, and now they
Mm-hmm.
are both household names. And I am
Mm-hmm.
Groot is a catchphrase. So I expect no less in Eternals. In Faihi we trust. In Marvel we trust.
I agree. MCU has almost never disappointed in a movie. And like, sorry to say, but with the DCEU, like
Hit and miss. Yeah.
it
Yeah,
is.
hit and miss ka eh.
Wonder Woman
Yeah.
#1 was so good. Wonder
Yeah.
Woman
Yeah.
2,
Agree.
after all the
84.
reviews, I didn't even bother watching it anymore. And then you have the mess called Batman versus Superman and Justice League. That big mess. Like,
To
why
be
did
fair, the Snyder cut was
An
A little
improvement,
yeah,
a little
definitely
better,
A
but it's
little
still the
better.
Justice
Yeah.
League.
his vision was definitely better than Josh Whedon's. But
Mm.
still, it was still a miss for a lot of the fans. Especially I was with him when we were watching Batman versus Superman, and then they said uh, that Martha scene. And then why did you say that name? And then just they had the same. Their moms had the same name. They're now friends. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's God. Okay, sorry. We're not here to talk about the DCU. We're here to talk about the Eternals. So what do you guys actually know about the Eternals? Just quick, let's give our audience a basic knowledge, basic background with the Eternals and the characters. You guys are most excited to see. As you said, Lex, very low key characters of the Eternals compared to Captain Marvel, the Avengers, the X-Men. They're B team
Mhm.
basically. They're not
Yeah.
the Guardians of the Galaxy. They're less popular.
ang Eternal lang na alam ko si Thanos.
Yeah, I didn't even know Hyperion was an Eternal.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That one of the Titans.
Yeah, so
One of the
uh,
yeah.
can you guys tell our audience a quick backstory on the characters and what you guys know about the Eternals?
Sige,
Um,
So
David.
from what I know, the
Go.
Eternals were created by the Celestials. So the Celestials came to Earth more than millennia ago and experimented on the apes that were on Earth. So they did genetic experimentations, and from those experiments, they created the Eternals, the humans, and the Deviants. So the
Mhm.
Deviants were these grotesque-looking figures, and we had humans, which is the balance between Eternals and Deviants, and Eternals, which is a race of powerful humans.
Basically, them, these
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, these guys.
Oh, okay. Huh. Wondering what their powers are gonna be. So do you wanna share anything? Basic knowledge.
Well, their powers are basically ano na yan, eh, we've seen it in with other characters, no? Like in if you've watched the trailers, which David hasn't had. Icarus is sort of like the Superman character, so strength, heat vision, and then you have the power guy, which is Hephaestus,
Mhm.
and then you have the warrior, which is Thena, and then it's nothing that we haven't seen before, but how they apply
Agree.
it, how they use it, will be the I guess that will be the sort of the sauce for the movie, no? How 10 characters will put it all together.
It
Yeah.
sort of sounds like they're like a Marvel Justice League.
From way
Yes,
before.
sort of. Yeah. And then you have Makari, who is the speedster. Iba-iba sila ng powers. Eh. And then you have Druig, who is sort of like the Tony Stark of the group because he uses the technology. Yung ganon. So it's interesting. But yeah, you see it on a higher plane kasi nga they were designed to be sort of like gods. And they do have godlike powers. So how they meld, how they use it, what the story will be, how it applies, yun yung magandang makita natin in the movie. But if you go into the 616 universe origin ng Eternals, it's really a broad history. Jack Kirby really created a broad universe as far as they're concerned. Sumakit yung ulo ko reading through all of the things that they did, and it must be interesting. So I plan to do get an omnibus sometime soon just to see how how it really translates onto the pages.
Magkaka-reprint yan, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then it's interesting also because you have Dane Whitman there, who happens to be the Black Knight, no? As everyone knows.
Yeah.
He's going to be the Black Knight. But I think in the movie, he's just playing the boyfriend of. I'm sorry, spoiler alert. He's a boyfriend of one of the characters. Hindi ko na sasabihin ko sino. But, I don't know if it transforms into the Black Knight
In the movie.
somewhere in the movie. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Lex, sabi mo nga, you don't know anything, right? You have no background with the Eternals too.
Yeah, I don't know much, but based on what I've seen in the trailers and what David and Jojo has said, I think they can be superheroes on steroids. But what's interesting about them is you get to see how superheroes fared in different parts of history, basing on the trailer. Sorry, David, slightly spoilery on the trailer. I think you get to see the Eternals in different periods of history, how they were mentoring or herding human beings. So that's a nice touch. Magkakaroon ng mythological angle yung superhero storytelling ng MCU.
I agree. I think the setup here is basically that the people that are actually in the books, the mythological gods and goddesses there. I think that's the intro point. Sila yung basis pala nun. Like the Japanese gods and the Western and the Greek gods. Baka sila yung basis. That's one theory of mine at least. So who do you think they're building up to? Because we know the MCU, they have faces. They built Thanos up. And honestly, Thanos did not disappoint. So it needs to be the big baddie. The next big baddie needs to be bigger than Thanos and worse.
Alam mo, the way I'm seeing it now, they're building up to something cosmic eh. Kasi, you have the Celestials now, and then you're going to have, they're thinking of the Fantastic Four, I think, is now somewhere in the pre-production stage na eh. So, when you have the FF there, that's something cosmic talaga. And then you have Doctor Strange, wherein you're talking of the multiverse. We nakita natin sa Loki, no? It's really more of a cosmic universe that they're trying to paint right now. So, I'm not sure lang kung who would be the big cosmic baddie that would come in and then tie all of those together.
Yeah,
Would it be
on top of
Galactus? I don't know.
On top of that, they've also introduced Adam Warlock.
Oh yeah, Will Poulter.
Yeah. I also share Jojo's theory about possibly Galactus, but I think he would be better reserved if the X-Men and the Fantastic Four were introduced first, because Galactus is a ultimate big baddie. He transcends this universe. He came from the previous universe before our own. So I think, just my theory, it would be, we've seen him already in Loki. I think Kang is going to be the next big baddie for the next phase of MCU. The actor is too good to be wasted on short spurts or in several movies only. So I think they're going to build up Jonathan Majors as a major player in the MCU.
And speaking of X-Men, the Celestials who made the Eternals and Humans are also responsible for making the X gene in X-Men. And so maybe it could be leading up to that, because yung snap ni Thanos could have also triggered a dormant X gene.
So, that's a nice theory. That's a good entry point for the reboot, though.
Yeah, it's a good entry point, especially since the Celestials created the X gene.
And then there's also speculation that in Doctor Strange, that might be the first appearance of Professor X in the MCU as part of the Illuminati.
Oh,
That's going to be so good.
Kaya tumataas yung value ngayon yung New Avengers, what is it, number 7 ba yun? Wherein the
The first
Illuminati, tumataas yung value niya ngayon because there's speculation that Charles Xavier might appear. First appearance sa MCU would be in Doctor Strange.
Yeah, and another Illuminati member is on his way to MCU, which is Namor.
Yeah.
Submariner.
Namor's going to be introduced in Black Panther 2, right? Something to look forward to. Kaya nakakakilig siya isipin eh, no? I can only hope that, well, you will be, David, but I don't know about us, but hopefully before makumpleto all the phases ng MCU, we're still alive to see it all. You will. I
Yeah,
don't know.
we're going to be, yeah. We're going to see the first movie crossover of Marvel and DC. We will
Sana
still be alive
maabutan,
to
sana,
witness.
sana maabutan natin. I sincerely hope so. So, speaking of comic books and really diving into it, and as collectors from way back, I know all of us have noticed that it's becoming more and more diverse in both the comic books and the movies, especially with casting and the art itself. Like, I wanna showcase Fearless, which is this limited mini series that focused on just the women of Marvel, or the most powerful women of Marvel. Storm, Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and all of them. So, are you guys agreeing with this move? Are they now shifting while they're shifting their focus? Is it too much, or is it still too little? Because we all know as readers that there are certain characters, regardless of gender, that needs more focus than others. Parang super played out na. This is why actually I never collected DC back then when I first started collecting. Because I thought, and a lot of people are gonna hate me for this, I thought Batman was overrated. Like, sobrang paulit-ulit na. It's all Batman, Superman, Batman. To clarify, this was when, before I started reading things like Hush or Year One, okay, now I know why Batman is rated this way. So, yun nga, going back to the question, do you think it's too much or do you think it's still too little with the female empowerment and the representation of the comic books?
We might have differing opinions, and it's okay. I'm just sharing mine. I don't think it's too much, actually, because one of my lines, one of my collecting lines, not only for comic books but also for my toys and statues, actually is the Big Seven for both DC and Marvel. For
Mm-hmm.
DC, the Big Seven only has one woman, Wonder Woman.
Mm, mm,
All
Yeah.
are guys. For
mhm,
Marvel, there's not even a woman in my Big Seven
mm,
lineup. So the Avengers Trinity,
mhm,
Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, and then you
Okay.
have the true Marvel Trinity, Spider-Man, Hulk, and Wolverine. And then the
mhm,
seventh member would be someone from the first family. I consider either Mr. Fantastic or the Thing. So there's no
mm,
female representation as well in the Marvel Big
mm,
Seven. You can
mm,
probably include Captain Marvel because she's been getting a lot of hype right now in the movies, in the
mm,
comics, but she hasn't cemented her position yet in the list of iconic characters from Marvel. So I think what
mm,
Marvel and DC are doing in promoting representation and inclusion, it's not too much. It's as long as they can tell organic stories, not just for the sake of selling books, but if
mhm,
they can tell organic stories and
mhm,
preferably introduce new characters, not converting established characters just to fit a sphere in the probably in in accomplishing representation and inclusion.
yeah.
If you introduce new characters such as Miles Morales, he's an African American.
Yeah.
You introduce John Kent as a member of
Mhm,
the LGBT.
mhm,
So they're not changing the established characters; they're introducing new ones in order to
mhm.
attract more readers to have representation. So that's okay for me. It's not too much. That's just my opinion.
It's the right move in your
Yeah,
opinion. It's the
Yeah,
step towards the right direction.
yeah.
yeah. I agree with Lex on that. No, to address the question of all of these now, no, that they were shifting into different genders, shifting into sexuality. That's fine. Kasi alam naman natin diverse talaga ang readership ng comic books. Eh. And for you to get more of a market, you really have to reach out to as a broad market as you can. Well, the only problem I would have with it is that, yun nga, sabi ni Lex, is when you reinvent an existing character. Like in the case of Tim Drake, I'll do the flip side of the John Kent story, no? Si Tim Drake kasi through the years, there was really no indication that he was bisexual. As far as I remember, because I was there when he was parang nandun ako talaga, no? But I remember reading the first issues. From that to this point, there was really no indication that he was bisexual. In fact, girlfriend pa niya si Stephanie Brown, the spoiler. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, they pop this on us. So I'm like, not that I'm angry, but it's just like parang ano yung motivation? Where is the background? Where is the build up to that? Whereas yung kay John Kent, I like the way they did it because it's a totally blank character, di ba? When
Yeah.
John Kent was first introduced, he was introduced as a boy. So okay lang yon. Blank slate siya. And then, mo ngayon, you move it forward, we still don't really know much about him, no? It is still the dad that's really the focus. But in essence now, you have a nice character that's built from the ground up na hindi pilit yung ginawang bisexual yung character. It can be easily explained. Walang history yung tao na he's been acting hetero all this time, no? And biglang ganito. So that's the main difference between the two. Now, if I take that a step further, hindi ko lang alam why, and Lex, David, correct me if I'm wrong, when I'm, or and Louis, no, when I read the DC books, I think they're focusing more now on the sexuality aspect of diversity, whereas Marvel is focusing more on the race and gender aspect of diversity. So kanya-kanya sila ng ano nila, ng focus nila on how to make comic books more diverse.
For me, I like the direction both of them are going. The only thing I wish for is that they just don't do it for the gimmicks. I wish they delve into the struggles of being part of that minority, because I want them to make it more relatable and for people to feel their struggles talaga. And speaking of inclusivity in Marvel, sa internals, Makari is going to be deaf. So I think she's going to be the first handicapped MCU superhero. And also, it's rumored that Druig will be openly gay in the movie.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
good.
more representation. And also, in the original comic books, I think it was Ajak and Makari who were both male, and they
Yeah.
turned them female into the movie. So there's more balance of male and female.
Yeah, so gender bending.
Speaking of the deaf character, I've seen a lot of like hate towards that move. Kasi like the Eternals can literally shape their cells, their atoms. So why is she deaf? Parang that's something I read na parang okay. So it's
Actually,
a lot of comic
that's
book
true.
theorists are
Agree.
yes.
Kaya nga tinawag na suspension of disbelief ang movies and ano eh. There are certain things that you should be willing to believe for, because it's a movie. It's
Yeah,
not,
for this,
Diba?
it's a story.
If
It's
you
a
want-
story. Just tell that.
if you don't, if you don't like it, then stick to the comic books. Keep reading those.
Correct. And I think
No one's really, diba? No one's forcing you to watch the movie.
to address your point kanina, Jojo, I think with, as you mentioned nga, the Marvel is more focused on race now, and then DC is more focused on sexuality. For our listeners who don't know, Tim Drake is one of the Robins. So
Yeah.
with Marvel, kasi I think they've established it a while back, especially with Wiccan and Hulkling and Iceman and Colossus. These are the three are classic characters. In fact, I didn't know. I was bi back then, but as mentioned nga kanina, every male comic book fan fantasizes about Psylocke. Pero sumasagi din sa isip ko lagi si Colossus. And I should have picked it up back then. So I'm a big Colossus. I'm a big Colossus fan, basically. And when they turned him gay, I think one of the struggles during that move was showcasing Nightcrawler and Colossus. Nightcrawler totally disregarding his friendship with Colossus because of how religiously strict Nightcrawler was, diba? And that was one of the issues that was tackled. And then you have you have Hulkling and Wiccan, which is one of the more openly gay couples, with Empire that came out I think last year, the mess of Empire. But we got Hulkling and Wiccan to be married. Constantine, I think, with ano naman, with DC. I think they teased sexuality before, but it was just an idea for them. They was just teasing it, like with Constantine and New 52 Green Lantern, right? That was the New 52, the one that was gay. Yeah, it's a New 52 Green Lantern, the blonde one, not the one not part of the Force. The one with the cape. I forgot. I forgot his name. But
Alan
yeah,
Scott?
yeah, I think
Oh
it was
yeah, the Golden Age Green Lantern.
yeah. When they remade the New 52, they
Yeah,
made him gay.
yeah,
So in fact,
yeah.
even sa Legends of Tomorrow, they made Constantine more kasi he was like he had sexual relations with King Shark. Is what they said. And it's actually canon, di ba? I don't know how
Yeah.
physically possible that is, but it's a story I'm willing to accept. And they made Constantine more than just about sexual preference. In fact, they did the
Yeah.
same thing with Deadpool. Deadpool, I know, is considered as pansexual, right?
Yep.
Mm.
Boink anything.
Yeah, true. Well, and point anything, basically. And so yeah, I think personally, then for me, I think it's the right move, and I agree with you guys. Don't just do it. Don't just. I hope the publishers don't just do it for the gimmick and just for the hype. And it's because this is
Yeah.
the direction. This is the direction we're going. I can honestly say that with the move with Miles Morales was not, was not part of the hype because
Yeah.
Miles Morales came out before the
BLM.
before no
Yep. Before BLM.
the movement
Yes.
from way before, but before
2011.
George Floyd. So, before the issue actually blew up, Miles Morales was already there, changing lives basically. So, a lot of there are a lot of haters of the new Superman
Yeah.
because he's bi,
Mhm.
and he's not even gay. He's bi, and a lot of people think it's a gimmick and all that. And as you said, yeah, Jojo, he's a blank slate. In fact, I collected, I read and collected Superman and Super Sons and Legion of
Wala, di ba?
Superheroes Millennium. Nag-time skip nga siya dun eh.
Oo.
Dinala siya, spoiler alert, sa story, dinala siya ng father ni Superman somewhere.
Yeah.
Still, I don't know if it's been explained as a comics, but dinala siya, and when he came back, he was a teenager. From an age na magkaedad sila ni New Robin to becoming a teenager and him finding himself. Of course, there's a lot of backlash towards it. How do you feel about this specific family? Do you think it's a gimmick? Do you think it's just a political move? Do you think it's to get new? Do you think it's to expand market? Do you think it's a marketing move?
It can be both kasi alam mo, well, their main audience is the US market, di ba? So with all the call for mas maano ang call for diversity kasi sa US eh. So I think they're catering to that market since medyo um, comic book sales have slumped through the years, no? So I think they're trying to create a market somewhere there. So it's part of it, but also maybe part of a social movement nga because of um, Americans really like inclusivity and they're batting for inclusivity for diversity. So they're probably throwing one stone at two birds to address all of those issues.
Yeah. We've been saying, or I think all of us has implied or has directly said that we don't want inclusivity or diversity just for the sake of selling comic books, just for the sake of creating controversies, but we want organic storytelling. Uh, if it's for an established character, the seeds should have been planted way before. If it's a blank slate, all the more better because you can start fresh. The trick then is to discern between the two. So I won't claim myself as an authority in telling the difference between the two. So for Superman, it's a wait and see for me. But I don't have any negative reaction, strong negative reaction towards it, and I'm willing to give it a chance. I just hope
Hmm.
other people will see that as well because sometimes well, most of the time, nakikita ko, yung galit nila, akala nila it's Clark Kent. They
Mm.
don't even bother to read
Clearly, they
the
don't
article.
read.
Yeah, they just read the thumbnail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Superman. Okay.
So, yun, I think people can give it a chance. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think it's Tom Taylor writing it. I like Tom Taylor's writing. So
Mhm.
he might be able to tell a good story.
May nabasa pa nga akong comment. Ano ba yung ginagawa nila? Baka next year si Batman at si Superman na magjowa. No? Sabi ko.
World's finest.
So, well,
Minsan,
maraming fan fiction nun, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah.
kasi minsan, ano I don't want to fault the haters or not the haters kasi if you're just hating, you don't have any basis for your reaction. But for those long-time fans, kaya I put myself in their shoes. For example, or this is a question to all of you. Your favorite character, for me it's Iron Man. What if they turned him gay?
Mm,
What would my reaction be? Or what if they turned him religious? And we all know Iron Man is atheistic, he's secular.
mm,
Would my feelings change towards my affinity for the character? Hindi ko masagot eh. But it should be consistent with his character. Years of storytelling. When Stanley created him, he had a vision for Tony Stark, and then
mm,
MCU has been telling the story pretty consistent. He's a flamboyant playboy. So
mm,
with Iron Man, I don't think there are certain core values for a character
mm,
that you can change. But for Superman,
mm,
it's John Kent. It's a different character. It's using the symbol of Superman, the greatest superhero, and
mm,
making him part of the LGBT. So it's for me,
mm,
it's a good representation.
mm.
Yeah,
Agree.
completely agree. Personally, kasi now that you put it that way, you actually made me realize some things. Like for example, one of my favorite characters has always been Thor, and if they suddenly turn him gay or bisexual, I'd be wondering too why. They have never hinted it. Eh. Now,
Mm,
if you waited for a few years and you dropped subtle hits here and there of his
mm,
upcoming change, I think that would be more acceptable for the fans. Kasi nga,
mm,
dinahandahan mo eh. Hindi ka sumabay
mm.
lang sa hype talaga. Hindi ka sumabay because, you know,
Yeah.
let's, for lack of a better term, let's call it a trend right now. But it's actually a
Mm,
movement.
yeah.
Basta hindi ka sumabay sa
Yeah.
trend. Just because yun yung nandyan, yun yung kita, and you want to be diverse, you want to be, you want to be racially or
Mm,
equal or something, make
yeah.
this character this way. Suddenly, with Superman, I think it's also a good move because he is the symbol of hope. That is what that S means
Yeah.
in Krypton. It's hope.
Yeah.
He's the symbol of hope, and for us at least, being part of the community ourselves, it's a big deal. It's a big deal towards acceptance that a major character such as Superman's son to come out in public without being scared, with
Mm,
him being accepted by his
And
parents.
without Clark Kent shooting a laser in his face.
Yeah, that's true.
mm,
Clark Kent being an angry father, why are you like this? You have to be like this. No.
mm,
Um, yun nga, it's a good thing. I found this clip. It was like the title was "Bitch Please," and one of the I'll send you guys the link later. But one of the things that was there was like if your childhood if your childhood was ruined because they turned Superman gay, then your childhood wasn't really amazing to begin with. So your childhood was really ruined to begin with. So you can,
Bitch,
he's
bitch,
the symbol of
please.
equality. Exactly. He's the symbol of equality. Like
Yeah.
he's an immigrant for crying
Mm,
out loud. Diba?
mm,
One of his
yeah.
scores is he's an immigrant. And for him to be accepted. And then again, John, who is half human, but half likes boys, half likes girls.
Mm,
Tas wala lang bigla. It's a really good move. And for me
mm,
personally, again, we feel being part of the community, we feel very, very positively strong about it.
yeah.
David, you wanna add some thoughts?
For me, I found it correct me if I'm wrong, but I found it a little bit too convenient for DC to
Mhm.
roll out Tim Drake and John
Mm,
Kent within about a month of it.
mm,
Actually,
So I hope that they use this platform not just for
Hype.
sales, but I hope that they how do I say this? I hope that they really represent the character well and they just don't do it for the money because
mm.
the timing for it was too convenient.
true. Or maybe they made the mistake. They realized their mistake with Tim Drake and wanted to correct it with
Mm.
John.
Yeah.
And they couldn't take
Actually,
it.
doon ako nagtataka din eh. It's like, how can you suddenly turn two characters, well, sorry, not turn, no, but have them become or have them be, yung kay Tim Drake, I already said, no, medyo, that's question mark for me. Pero yung kay John Kent, that's okay. If they had just done John Kent, okay lang yan. But to have those two characters in a span of weeks to be revealed to be bisexual, parang wait, parang are you just doing this to push that agenda, or was it organically done? Kasi I think what we're all agreed with, if you're going to do something like this, it has to come from an organic place, no? You just don't one day reveal that this guy is homosexual or he's lesbian or he's bisexual out of nowhere. So they did it well with John, but yung kay Tim Drake yun ang medyo question mark sa akin. Parang the same way, I'll take you back a few years ago when they first revealed that North Star was gay. Remember
Mhm.
that? Those of you are into Alpha Flight.
106.
Oo, di ba? Prior to that, wala namang indication eh. In fact, pag binabasa mo yung Alpha Flight noon, you think na masyado yata silang close ng sister niya. So, in the context of the 80s and the 90s, that's something else. Parang Wanda Pietro, the ultimate, di
Yeah.
ba? Yung ultimates, parang ganon. And then out of nowhere, they suddenly revealed that Jean-Pierre is gay. So sabi ko, where was the build-up to that? There was no indication. And then, of course, sabi ng iba, well, that's why he was close to his sister. But, that could still have been misconstrued in some other way. So, hindi solid yung pagkaka-establish ng backstory na yun. And if they're going to continue on this path, no, let's say they will create characters or they will sort of change the character, then establish a backstory for it to make it really more logical, and more more organic about it. And I feel strongly about that because my youngest son, he's identifying as part of the LGBT, so
Mhm.
I asked him about it. Sabi ko, what do you think about this? We have those kinds of conversations. So what do you think about this? Yung kay Tim Drake, I explained it to him. Years, no indication. John Kent, new character. I think I like John Kent better, sabi niya. Kasi he's a black slate eh. But this one, sabi niya, the other ones, Tim Drake, parang he doesn't understand the motivation for that as well. So, that's where I am as with regard to that.
I think it's also good if they went back to it a bit.
Mm.
What am I talking about? All new X-Men. The one you sold me. So I remember that. I read that. The all new X-Men where they brought back First Class.
Mm.
So they got to meet their younger selves, and there was a
Yeah.
conversation between the old Bobby and the young Bobby. Na
Yeah.
the young Bobby didn't know at the point that he was gay, but the old one already knew.
Mm.
And
Mm.
he can't say anything about the future, but he is saying,
Mm.
"I know what you're feeling. I know the
Mhm.
confusion, and you will figure it out soon. But I
Yeah.
know where you're feeling, and I know where you're at." And yung binalikan nila na point, I think that's a really nice touch, kasi it explains why there wasn't any indication from before. Na it was just inner thoughts lang pala talaga. Let's go more local with regards to comic books. Since
Okay.
you're all part of the community here in the Philippines, I'm not actually sure, kasi I'm not that active with the main groups like Comicada or Comic Bro or the discussion groups. I'm more active sa buy and sell.
Mindset.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm more active sa buy and sell groups. Do you think the fan base is growing? And I don't mean like in age, in gender, not just not just us na tumatanda na has been fans before. Nagbabago lang talaga age natin. But do you think it's expanding? I've seen a lot more females, women buying and selling sa groups. In fact, yung kwento ko kanina about selling something is killing the children, fifth print, I sold to a girl. So do you think it's growing? How's the community in the local groups?
The market right now is not the same compared to the 90s, wherein it's regular for a comic book to sell millions of copies like X-Men 1, X-Force 1, Spawn,
Mhm.
Death of Superman. Right now, you'll be lucky to sell 500K, 600K. But I think compared to the previous decade, the fan base is growing for two apparent reasons. One would be MCU and to a smaller extent DCEU. The movies might affect some people to become fans, and then they want to take a crack at the comic book to see what the fuss is all about. I've seen some people jumping from the movies to the comic book, so it's it's a real thing. It can happen. The second one would be because of the pandemic. Sandy told me that while they closed their physical shop in BGC, their
Mhm.
sales, their online sales actually increased. And this is not unique to the Philippines. Even in other countries, the US, the hobby generally, not only comic books, but also trading cards, NBA cards, collectible gaming cards,
Yeah.
it became healthier because people were bored in their homes. So they wanted to spend their money. They devoted their time to eBay. And Louis, like you frequented the marketplace and bought the comic books of Jojo and David. So the market is healthier compared to the past decade, and I think the fan base is growing. I've seen a lot of females as well in the hobby.
Speaking of the pandemic, I actually joined the Facebook groups, the comic book groups sa Facebook because of the pandemic because I was super bored at home. So prior to that, I had no knowledge that there were local groups about comic books. And the community was super welcoming. I can say that. It's not like your other Facebook communities na toxic and bring people down. These people actually take the time off their days to help you out and clear up whatever misconceptions you have about comic books, or if you're confused about certain things, they're there to help you.
Mhm.
So the
So
community
you
is
can
really
say that
accepting.
they're really friendly towards the
Yes.
newcomers.
Yes.
Alright. Okay, so because like for our listeners and for the people who are watching, I'm posting some of the groups down below. These are the groups that we've joined. These are only a few. There are a lot of groups out there. Some are more focused on buy and sell. Some are more focused on discussion. And as David has mentioned, they're really friendly to newcomers. They'll take the time. So if you're, I want to say, paano ba sabihin to? If you've suddenly taken an interest in comic book collecting and the characters, feel free to ask because the people here, which includes the three people that I'm with right now, will really reply to your inquiries. Like for example, so yeah, they're gonna take the time to explain if you're looking for a particular book, especially that's been out of print for a while. Post ka lang doon. They will be more than happy to help you out. I know that you two have at one point in time or multiple points in time, as my partner has complained frequently before, because we used to rent in a 40 square meter condo. Can you imagine comic book boxes So 40 square meter the condo. Kaya ito, every time he moves, laban na ba yan? Daming kahon! So yeah, now we've got, and you know, for the most part, it's because of these groups that actually helped me. Jojo, ikaw, what do you think about the local community and the good, both the good things and the bad? Is the fan base
Um,
growing?
yeah, it's growing. Okay, again, being the oldest of the group, no. During in our time, when I was like in grade school, ilan lang kami really that could afford to buy those comic books. No? It's always the rich kids who were um able to buy the new books. And what we did back then was like hiraman kami ng comics. So ako, I couldn't afford. So parang pahiram from the rich kids, and we returned it like after 2 days. But now we see now that more people are, maybe because of better economies and everything, people are able to get into comic books, and it creates a very nice community. I wasn't really active in the communities until I started selling last June. That's when I started, June of 2020. So I didn't know what to expect.
June lang
So
ba
I just
yun?
put up.
That
So
was
Yeah, it
we
was
we
June.
joined almost the same time. June din ako,
Yeah,
2020.
parang
yeah.
3 taon na ako bumibili sa'yo, I swear. Or ganun lang kami yung pinabili ko. That was just June.
No, ganun ka lang.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
For the most part, the community has really been very welcoming. No? It's like you suddenly start chatting with, you start chatting with the people that buy from you. Kasi syempre doon, mag-emanate naman yan di ba? Bro, meron kang ganito. And then, pag ganun yung message, then you start, meron akong ganito, meron akong ganyan. Oh, you read this pala, bro. So, you start chatting with people na hindi mo naman talaga kilala except for your transactions. But later on, people like David and Lex and like you, Louie, no, na nakilala ko na. I'd like to go out with you guys when it's pwede na. It's like when there's a con here, I wouldn't mind, walking around and hanging out with you guys. I mean, halos, I would say like 98, 99% of the people I've met in the communities are very welcoming. Masarap kausap kasi we talk about something that's not a part of our jobs It's something that it's parang escape natin to And um well, I used to go to cons also when I was still living in the States. Medyo iba yung ewan ko. The atmosphere is a bit different and well, wala pang internet during that time. So
What's the
I
difference
just
between the
basically
cons there and the cons here? What?
uh grabe yung mga sellers doon. Basically anything that you want or you're hunting, you're looking for, they have it. So I was able really to complete a lot of runs because of those cons. And these are even just the smaller cons pa, hindi pa yung malalaki like the San Diego or the NYCC.
Mhm.
Ito lang yung mga local like the San Jose Comic Convention or basta maliliit lang. And talagang the people are into it. When you see the pictures, diba? Yung ngayon, mga naka-cosplay. The cosplay even started way before pa. Meron talagang mga dadating doon. They're dressed up in their costumes and everything. So this was like in the, towards the end of the 80s, early 90s, when I was attending there. Pero yung diversity of production talaga yung maganda sa cons doon. And basically if you're a hunter and like me then, actually the thrill for me was the hunt. Pare treasure trove. Ikaw ang maubusan ng pera talaga pag ano. All the issues you're looking for are there. It's just that you probably don't have enough money to get all the things that you want.
Lalo na siguro kung magkakasama tayong apat. I mean, sul-sul. Kumbaga, buy this, buy that. Uy,
Budol.
Oh, budol. And then you're talking about the genders, no? Yes, nagulat din ako. I had buyers who are young women, no? Na they're looking for not necessarily female-centric books, but also the the main superhero books na. Tsaka malakas silang bumili in fairness, ah. So Sabi ko ba okay to ah. Like, I never realized. Although I would say, as far as my sellers are concerned, maybe that's only about 20% of my total buyers. Pero even at that, you don't really expect that many, di ba?
Yeah.
Kasi
Mm. Malaki na yun.
puro puro guys tayo eh. But I've had a few na okay, they really get the high, what I would consider the premium stuff.
Yeah, even when walking through Comic Odyssey or Planet X, mas nakikita ko madalas yung ano. I think the women are just shy of interacting with the groups because it's digital, and they would rather go to the store. When I go to Planet X Comics sa Makati, it's lagi constantly, every time I go, may makakasalubong ako at may papasok na babae who are just gonna pick, who knows, which is more surprising, who knows what they want. It's not that they're starting, they already know what they want. They are there to pick up their weekly pulse, and and yeah. Speaking of, quick segue lang, we're actually sponsored today by Planet X Comics. I'll be posting the links here. You can find them on Facebook, facebook.com/planetxcomicsphil. That's on Facebook, and shopee.ph/planetxcomics. If you use the voucher code PLAN21L10, you'll get 10% off anything.
Wow.
So that's including us. So good luck with your wallet, guys. That's for just the first 50 users of the code. So it's very limited. So if you guys are looking for trade paperbacks or hardcovers, it's 10% off of it. No minimum purchase, but 50 vouchers lang available. Anyway, yun yeah. Going back to Planet X Comics, so many women. Alam mo yun? And even the clerks, they're knowledgeable. Pati sa Philbars. And sila Ate Raquel sa Comic Quest, they're very, very knowledgeable, which is what I admire more.
Yeah. Pag may hinahanap akong issue dati sa Comic Quest, I would just tell Raquel about it. She knows. So, yan yung kasunod nito. Oh, ganyan. Okay, go. Sige. So, di ba? Parang kausap mo, alam din talaga ng kausap mo kung yung nagbibenta, kung yung binibenta.
When they reopened and when they got bought by a new owner, tinext na ako agad. Sir Louie, open na kami ulit, baka may gusto ka. Sabi ko, wait lang.
Are they open?
Yeah,
So is it still called
They're
Comic
under
Quest?
new management.
yeah, they're under new
Still Comic
management.
Quest.
Yes.
Oh.
The one in Festival Mall in Alabang, I think is still closed because the store fully closed. But Comic Quest itself, I think they sold it already. Someone, a fan then, apparently that's the chika, a fan and a frequent buyer din sa Comic Quest yung bumili ng store.
Okay. Parang Philbars din.
Yeah.
Comic fans din yung bumili. Sina Jacob. I mean.
Oh, okay. Talaga? Ganun din pa. So, yeah, basically, maybe that's it. Maybe, he's living the dream. Whoever they are, what those comic book stores, they're living the dream. If again, to our listeners out there, if you guys are looking for a community of comic book geeks, if you want to get into it, or even if you just have an interest and you don't know where to start, just ask the guys with me, ask the guys on the groups, just go in there, post something.
Yeah.
This isn't your regular gaming group where a lot of people are very, very toxic. Honestly, as fans ourselves, di ba? Pag gaming group, ganun eh. Ano?
Sakit.
Pabait kami.
Yeah, exactly. Super, super, super duper bad. Super helpful.
Yeah.
Honestly, as fans ourselves, we're just happy the fan base is growing. We're just happy that a lot more people are getting into it. As they say nga, in marketing and advertising, print is dying. So comic books might be a part of it. I hope not. And that's why we keep encouraging people to, buy. What I do personally, and what I do personally is I buy the comic books. I think Jojo does the same thing. I buy the books, the singles, and then I read it online. At least masabi ko, I supported artists. Kasi hindi ko lang talaga mabuksan. You know?
Oh.
So, last question, guys. If, for example, my partner here, if he's new to the scene, what advice could you give him about where he should get started?
But to be fair, I knew where I started.
Which
So
was?
I'm not the biggest comic book fan, but I'm a big gamer. So just like David, I started with Injustice. So when Injustice came out, I was like, okay, Superman's the villain. This is iba to. This is very different. So I started reading the comics of Injustice. Nauna ako dito. I think umabot ako year 3.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Superman Yellow.
Dire-diretso ako noon. Dire-diretso ako magbasa ng ano nun. Pero online
At
lang.
work, mind you.
Yeah, at work. So yung dating obsession ko with manga was replaced suddenly with the Injustice Comics. Tapos, I think at around that time, at 2013, was the release of New 52 or something like that. So New 52 I started with as well.
Yeah.
Pero I started with the game and then moved into the actual comics.
So if it were you, that's what you would advise a newcomer. If you're already playing a game and you're interested with their backstory,
If you want to read more of the lore, what the game is about, diba?
it all starts with that one story. How about you guys? What would you advise a newcomer? Like, for example, if they're interested in Batman, let's say, a quick example. Where would they start? Wait, hang on. Batman is a bad example. A really bad example. I'm sorry, it's a bad example. I don't know, X-Men?
Probably.
X-Men, Avengers.
No, X-Men is a bit dense right now because kahit ako, I'm still catching up the whole Krakoa thing. So that's why I'm reading now House of X, Powers of X. I'm rereading the whole thing to catch up with the whole thing. No, maybe start off with the newer characters like Miles Morales, like even the Young Avengers. No? If you can pick up like the trade paperbacks for that, those would be good places to start. No, Runaways. Kasi when you start off with established characters already, like the big 3 or the big 7 of both companies, ang lawak na ng backstory niya, di ba? Lex, David, no? It's really the continuity somehow. Well, they tried to reboot it with the Ultimate Comics, which eventually ended also. But it's inevitable that you will run into continuity problems if you want to just get into it. Start off with titles that don't have that long of a backstory at na pwede mo pang mahabol, so to speak, no? And there should be like the Young Avengers, again, no? Like Miles Morales, what else? And some indie stuff. Actually, if you want to get into comic books, probably the indie stuff would be the best place to start kasi you're not dealing with any continuity.
Yeah.
These are basically fresh stories that can get you hooked into the medium, and then later on, if you're feeling adventurous, and then you can branch out into the continuity bound characters. But yeah, I would say start off with indies. Those might be good places to start. Like Radiant Black, for instance, di ba? Wala naman masyadong backstory pa si Radiant Black eh. So if you're into superhero comic books, start with that. Then there's SIKTC, and then there's Doctera, and all of these things.
So Lex, David, any advice for our listeners out there?
For more established characters, it's easy to Google their most iconic stories. So for Batman, there's TDKR, and then there's Long Halloween. And then if for more characters that have a lot of stories, I'd go back to the roots. So for example, Spider-Man, I'd recommend reading AF-15 then ASM Volume 1. So at least that way you're introduced to the character the same way the rest of the world was introduced to the character. And also it's important to know how to read the panels and the speech bubbles in order. Because if you don't know how to, it gets really confusing.
Yeah, napapangunahan yung story if you suddenly, minsan kasi the panels are vertical, minsan it's horizontal, minsan it's full page spread, tas pag ganun yung speech bubbles, that's how you're gonna read it.
Buti I just switched from manga to comics. So, binaliktad ko lang.
Yes, basically from right to left to right.
Oh, diba?
Speaking of first appearances, show off your Eternals #1 naman and your
Whoa!
When I opened the back, it was super white.
Yun!
I thought it was a second print or something. Here.
Ganda.
Solid.
Kakaingit. Solid yan.
And yung what's your most prized issue right now? The one that you recently just got.
The 181.
Yeah.
I'll get it. Wait lang.
Yeah. Konting flex dyan. Konting flex.
Konting flex. Grabe yung pinakabata yung may pinaka-ma-flex. So,
Nice.
Here.
Wow!
first appearance of
I'll take
Wolverine.
it off the bag and board.
Oh, pwedeng pahawak.
Kahit sa screen lang.
Oo.
Makaranas man lang.
Parang
Pa-experience.
diba?
Shit. First appearance of
Ganda.
Wolverine versus Hulk.
Di ba sa last page, that's where Wolverine appeared? Full body shot.
So 180.
And you're
That
going
was
to
180.
that was 180, yeah. 180.
Yeah.
Diyan nga pala, battle na talaga sila.
Yeah, 180 was the last
Ganda.
page.
This was,
Ganda.
if you're familiar with Giant Size X-Men #1, yung first appearance of the second X-Men team, sila Storm, sila Wolverine, and all that. That's the essential
X-Men.
plan. It's not actually his first appearance. Wolverine first appeared as a cameo in Hulk 180 and 181, which David has, which is, I'm not even gonna say the amount, dude. Huwag natin pag-usapan. Magkano? And he's 20.
Yeah.
He's 20.
David, saan ka nakatira? Saan ka nakatira, David?
Papadalan ka lang naman ng grab food, ikaw naman.
Oo.
I know you know.
Para
Kasi,
enjoy ka.
Customers tayo ni David, di ba?
Yes.
Alam natin.
Walking distance from
I
you.
have the exact address. Grabe history. Lex, how about you?
If somebody asks me what books should I read or where should I start, I'll treat that question the same way as if somebody asks me what movie should I see or what TV series, what books should I read. It depends on your taste. If you like apocalyptic stories, then I'll recommend The Walking Dead or Why the Last Man.
Mhm. I'm sad that was cancelled. Sorry.
Yeah.
Segue.
I was bored. Episode 1, hindi ko na masundan ng episode 2. Na-bored ako. Partida, I'm a big fan of Why the Last Man. But I was bored. I was bored. The first episode. If one likes mythology or fantasy, then of course, Sandman. I recommend the Sandman. Religion, there's Preacher, but it's blasphemous, and Judas as well. For those who like animals, you have Stray Dogs. I'm a big fan of Stray Dogs. It's like Silence of the Lambs meets Lady and the Tramp. Parang it's a horror story told through the point of view of dogs. And then you have Primordial as well. And then for epic storylines, you have Bone. It's comparable to The Lord of the Rings. For existentialist stories, you have Ice Cream Man from Image and Haha. It's one-shot anthology stories dealing about philosophical stuff. Heavy, very cerebral reading. For sci-fi, it's Manhattan Projects. I like Manhattan Projects. It's like X-Men, but the team is composed of Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman, scientists. It's like the scientists forming their own super team. But
That sounds cool.
that's cool. Actually,
Interesting.
the story is already finished. Parang 25 issues lang siya. It's already finished. So Einstein was a badass in that storyline. I recommended it to several friends, and so far all of them loved it as well.
It's
Manhattan
very,
Project.
Anong title eh?
Yeah,
It's the Manhattan Projects, written by Jonathan Hickman. Yeah, si Hickman yan. So master storyteller, Jonathan Hickman.
I thought it was like when I first saw this, I thought it was related to like Mr. Manhattan, Watchmen. Pero hindi pala. Okay, sige. I will cut this, and I will go to fullybook.com later.
Science super. It's already collected in trade paperbacks, and I keep seeing the paperbacks whenever there's a comic at sale. Parang 300 each lang. Si Tom Collier, if you know him, he collected it. He loved the entire storyline. Nabuo niya.
Oh, okay.
Through TPs.
Sige, this is truly noted.
With respect to superheroes, of course, if it's comic books, usually it involves superheroes. Just like what David said, um, sometimes you have to go back to the roots kasi and Jojo also referenced this. Kapag superhero stories, more or less it's a bit insulated, especially the modern stuff. There's a lot of
Yeah.
continuity. There's a lot of heavy back reading if you really truly want to understand. But
Mhm.
I keep a list. As I mentioned before, I collect the greatest stories of major characters from Marvel and DC. So for Batman, Year One, you can read Year One. It's very good. For Daredevil, it's Born Again. So I would like to point out as well that I've noticed this difference when it comes to Marvel. The greatest stories usually involve a story somewhere between their origin or death. So it's a life event. For
Mm.
example, X-Men, it's
Mm.
the Dark
Yeah.
Phoenix saga. For Spider-Man, it's Kraven's Last Hunt. For Wolverine,
Mm.
the miniseries by Chris Claremont. So it
Mm.
happened in the middle portion of their lives. But for DC, since they
Mm.
are icons, the greatest stories of DC characters are usually the origin or the death. Wonder Woman, Gods and
Mm.
Mortals.
Mhm.
For Batman, it's Year One.
Mhm.
Uh, for Superman, whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. So
Mhm.
it's the Twilight Years. Dark Knight Returns, it
Yeah.
tells the Twilight Years of Batman. Because I noticed that since DC has more iconic characters, while Marvel are more relatable characters, I keep
Yeah.
seeing the
Mm.
difference between the two storytelling styles between these two
Mm.
publishers. So that's
Mm.
it. If anybody wants to know the best stories of the major superheroes from Marvel and DC, I keep a list actually, and I try to complete them in singles, trade paperback, and hardcover format. That's how OC I am with regards to my
Mm.
collection.
Cool.
Yeah, I
Ang
know what you
galing.
mean sa pagka-OC. For me naman, personally, I split it into kasi if I want to read new stories, and I'm not saying na walang new stories sa Marvel and DC, but with
Mm.
indies kasi, Image, Vertigo, it's more miniseries and short stories. The series that does not span, yeah, Golden Age, Silver Age, Modern, it doesn't span all
Mm.
those years. So mas madaling humabol. So if habol ko is
Mm.
are week stories, sure, I'll read indies. If ang habol ko characters, that's when I go to Marvel, Marvel and DC. The only character I think sa other side sa akin is Spawn. And I still haven't finished reading it. I still haven't finished catching up. So if you guys want to get if for listeners who want to get started, my advice is at least this is what worked for me. If you want to go for an entire for a short series lang, just to get into it, go for the indies first. There's a specific character you're looking for, like David is collecting Green Arrow, um,
Mm.
go for Marvel and DC. Kasi icons na yan eh. Well, new stories talaga yung sa iba. And for the gays, we have the most recent Jean versus Wanda big battle. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but you know, it's been it's been debated by everybody who's gonna win, Phoenix or
But this was
Scarlet
brought up
Witch.
because of the recent WandaVision.
Yeah,
Mm.
a
Yeah.
lot of people think.
Although I think a lot of people have been debating this for a long time.
Again, I'd like to thank our three guests today. Thank you so much, David, Jojo, and Lex. Thank you for
Thank you.
taking the time to hang out with Enter Headspace. This episode will be released a day before Eternals. Hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers bukas na yung cinemas by then. Sabi daw, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Sabi
right.
daw
Thank
bukas na yung.
you.
So thank you again. Again, this is Headspace. You can find us every Thursdays on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and the links will also be posted on Twitter. Every episode is published every Thursday at 8 p.m. So thank you guys. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Wait! In true MCU tradition, here's a post-credit scene. So who do you guys want to see next? Any teams, origin stories, or arcs that you want the MCU or the DCEU to do? Let us know and get the chance to win a trade paperback copy of the Ultimate X-Men Volume 1 straight from my own personal collection. Share our stream either from Spotify or YouTube. Tag us, facebook.com/Enter HeadSpace, or on Twitter or Instagram @Enter HeadSpace. And please use #Enter HeadSpace so we can track you. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Please. Thank you.